Hey, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri Appellate Attorney. I'm retired, and this is not legal advice. Everything I say is simply commenting on the law, and this will be what we're commenting on today. Well, today I'm down in the warm tropical sun, probably somewhere around Costa Rica or Panama, and I'm probably having a great time, and I'm probably not thinking very much about this channel. But in order to prevent having to make videos while I'm on the cruise, I made these videos to set aside so that they'd be available to run while I was gone. With that in mind, let me go to the topic of the day. I have had some questions about what is the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony. So we're going to explore that, and we're going to explore the difference between misdemeanors and felonies, the two categories of crime that are in the American legal system. Understanding these can help you recognize the seriousness of various offenses as well as their potential consequences. Let's start with a little bit of history. Felonies were considered the most serious crimes, often punishable by death or forfeiture of property. And of course, prison was right up in there too. Examples included things like treason, murder, rape, robbery, arson. In the Old West, you could have added horse theft, because if somebody stole your horse in the middle of the desert, it was probably tantamount to murder. Misdemeanors. These were less serious offenses, typically punished by fines or short jail terms. They included things like petty theft, minor assaults, trespasses. Today, the distinction remains largely similar, but there are more structured legal consequences. And we'll talk about structure in the context of my experience, which of course is in Missouri law, but much of this will apply in other areas as well. And you can probably look this up just by going to your state statutes, which I think in every state now are online. In modern legal systems, misdemeanors are the lesser offenses, and they usually result in fines, probation, or jail time of less than a year. In fact, in Jefferson City, where I practiced for a long time, if someone had a first-time misdemeanor and nobody was hurt, in almost every instance, they wound up on probation. They still had a conviction, but they wound up on probation. Felonies, on the other hand, are more serious crimes with harsher penalties, including imprisonment for more than a year or even life sentences. But the difference primarily is one of degree, one of gradation. There are different qualities of felonies, and just because something is a felony doesn't mean that it is necessarily more serious than a misdemeanor, particularly not to the victim. It may be more serious to the legal system as opposed to the victim. Now, let's look at some examples to illustrate how certain actions can be categorized as misdemeanors or felonies. Assault is a good place to start. A misdemeanor assault is somebody pushing someone during an argument, causing them to stumble, but maybe not be fall or be injured. Now, if you push them up against the wall and they bash their head, or you bash their head into the wall, that could be considered potentially either a more serious misdemeanor or a felony. In fact, if you use a weapon like a baseball bat during an altercation, that's usually aggravated assault due to the intent to inflict serious bodily harm. So again, the same underlying cause of action, assault, can produce both misdemeanors and felonies. Theft. If you go into the Quickie Mart and you shoplift a quart of oil, well, it's a misdemeanor. You're not going to wind up going to jail in most cases. You probably are going to pay a fine. You're probably going to get trespassed from the Quickie Mart. At any rate, that's a good example of a theft-based misdemeanor, shoplifting. But if you go and you walk into Best Buy and you walk out with a new iPhone without paying for it, that's probably grand theft, and that's going to be a felony. Vandalism. Vandalism is usually a misdemeanor when it's minor graffiti. But if you cause significant damage, like you deface a historical monument, or you burn down a historical building, that increases the severity and makes it, because of the amount of damage, it makes it a felony. Drug possession. It is a misdemeanor to possess small amounts of marijuana in those jurisdictions where it's illegal to have marijuana. In pretty much every jurisdiction, possessing large quantities of marijuana with the intent to distribute is a more serious violation and usually is a felony. Driving under the influence, DUI, or driving while intoxicated, which is what it's called in Missouri, DWI. In most cases, a first-time DUI without injury or accident is a misdemeanor. Repeated offenses, or those that cause an accident that results in injury or death, are usually considered felony. And that's a pretty significant categorization, because when you commit felony DUI, you are almost always looking at prison time. In Missouri, where I practiced, misdemeanors were classified into 4 different levels, classes A through D. Each class represents a different level of severity. Here's a breakdown of each class, including examples of each typically associated with them. Class A misdemeanor, most serious type of misdemeanor in Missouri. You can get up to 1 year in the county jail and or a fine of up to $2,000. So assault in the 3rd degree, causing physical injury to a person, generally without intent. Driving while intoxicated as a first offense is a Class A misdemeanor. Stealing property or services worth less than $750 is also a Class A misdemeanor. Then there's the Class B misdemeanor. It's less severe than a Class A, but it's still significant. You can get up to 6 months in the county jail or a fine of up to $1,000. First degree trespassing, in other words, knowingly entering or remaining unlawfully in a building, that's a Class B misdemeanor. If you are felony, you can also have a felony trespass if you are armed. Making a false report. If you make a false police report, that's a Class B misdemeanor. If you are a minor in possession of alcohol, or you facilitate a minor to be in possession of alcohol, Class B misdemeanor. A Class C misdemeanor, considered less serious than Class B, up to 15 days in the county jail or a fine of up to $750. Driving with a suspended license, certain traffic violations, and public intoxication are types of Class C misdemeanors. And then there's the Class D misdemeanor, which is the least serious type. You could be fined up to $500. No jail time is usually involved. Things like littering, disturbing the peace, minor traffic offenses, that sort of thing. In most states, I think resisting arrest without violence is generally considered to be a misdemeanor. I need to point out that there can be aggravating factors that can increase the penalties for all of these misdemeanors. For example, the presence of weapons can increase the severity of charges. And in some cases, particularly a Class A misdemeanor, it can upgrade it to a felony. And I would add that a lot of times felony cases get pleaded down to misdemeanors, and misdemeanors get pleaded down from Class A down to Class D in order to resolve the situation, for there to be some form of justice, particularly in those situations where the prosecutor doesn't really want to put on a 2-day trial over shoplifting. Understand these classifications better help you understand how serious the offense is. That's really all those classifications do. Now, I want to make a distinction here between state law and federal law. Federal law defines a felony as a crime punishable by death or imprisonment in excess of 1 year. So if it's punishable by exactly 1 year or less, it's classified as a misdemeanor. The classification is based on the crime's potential sentence, so a crime remains classified as a felony even if the defendant convicted of a felony receives a sentence of less than 1 year. Now, in Missouri, felonies are categorized into 5 classes, A through E. Each class represents a different level of severity. Here's the breakdown. A Class A felony, the most serious type, is 10 to 30 years in prison or life in prison, depending again on how serious the crime is. Examples: first-degree murder, first-degree robbery, armed robbery involving a dangerous weapon, first-degree kidnapping. All of those are Class A felonies. Class B felonies. In these, the prison sentences between 5 to 15 years. They include voluntary manslaughter, second-degree robbery, first-degree burglary, entering a building with the intent to commit a crime while armed or cause injury while committing a crime. So if you bust into somebody's house to go beat them up, that's burglary, first-degree burglary. It's a Class B felony. A Class C felony, mid-level felonies with significant penalties, 3 to 10 years in prison and optional fines. Theft of property valued between $25,000 and $750,000 in value are Class C felonies. Second-degree assault, causing injury with a deadly weapon. Possession of a controlled substance. Again, Class C felonies can be still pretty severe. Class D, it's a lesser felony with more moderate penalties. You can go to prison for up to 7 years and have optional fines. The theft of property between $25,000 and $750 is a Class D felony. Forgery, for example, is a Class D felony. Resisting arrest by fleeing, what we normally call fleeing and eluding, that's a Class D felony in Missouri. And then Class E felonies. It is the least serious type of felony in Missouri. It can go up to 4 years in prison and involve optional fines. Invasion of privacy is a Class E felony. Unlawful use of a weapon is a Class E felony. Leaving the scene of an accident involving injury is a Class E felony. Now, again, just as with misdemeanor cases, certain circumstances like prior convictions, presence of a weapon, can lead to enhanced penalties or reclassification of charges. So a Class D felony, if you commit it with a firearm and somebody is hurt or shot, that can go all the way up to a Class A felony. Judges often have discretion within the sentencing range to consider various factors, such as the offender's criminal history and the circumstances of the crime, as well as what led to the commission of the crime, the person's individual personal state, their mental health, that sort of thing. Those can affect sentencing. And even though you could get a sentence between 3 years and 10 years in some of those cases, if you got a sentence of 1 year, it wouldn't change the classification of the felony. It would just reflect the judge's application of discretion to the sentencing involved. And again, many felony cases are resolved through plea bargains, which can result in reduced charges or lighter sentences. That's sort of the entire history and everything with regard to felonies and misdemeanors and the classifications. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Again, if you have the opportunity today, do a kindness for somebody. And then come on back down here tomorrow. Join me at the beach. We'll talk about something else. I shouldn't have to say this, but you don't seek legal advice from a guy down at the beach. You seek it from a lawyer in a lawyer's office, where there are people running around in suits and secretaries and all kinds of other people. I'm just a YouTuber. I'm a retired attorney at this point. And although I retain my license to practice in the state of Missouri, I am not here dispensing legal advice. I'm just offering general content on the law. And here are some videos that YouTube thinks you may enjoy.